I'm Morris Maduro. We make about 30,000 decisions a day. You probably have heard that. But when you consider we're awake maybe 65,000 seconds a day, that's a decision every other second. So we know we're not making that many conscious decisions, but then you think, okay, well, 95% of our behavior is by habit. So a good portion of that 33,000, let's call it 31,500, is habit. And that's what this is about. So because we're making all these habitual decisions, 95% of our behavior is by habit, and we're making 33,000 of them a day, we are creating just more and more and more of our yesterdays. This is that whole thing of we're just recreating the past over and over and over because we're priming ourselves into making the same kind of decision. We prime ourselves the same kind of decision. So what I've done is two things. One is, so I do have the 7 performance areas: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional is in the middle, and then relationship, professional, financial. Now, the mental, physical, spiritual is in our control, 100%, right? The relationship, professional, and financial requires involvement with other people, some kind of collaboration. If we're selling, we need a buyer. If we're buying, we need somebody to sell, who's selling it. If we're leading, we need a follower. If we're, so there's some involvement of other people over here with the relationship, professional, financial. So that's out of our control, but we've got to be managing ourselves in such a way that we have a high probability of getting our outcome. Now notice the emotional is in the middle, because when you leave it to just chance, this emotional is probably on this side over here, out of your control, because it's easy to be hijacked, and once you're hijacked and triggered, it's very difficult to get that back on track. Anxiety spirals, etc. What we want is the emotional to be fully in the part that we control: mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. So we run laps around that to get the identity leveled up to the point where the person is ready for their next quest. And to do that, we use the 7-step reset process. So this is like this 33,000 stimulus response cycles, but I've broken it down into a way that we can manage it. Something that you've experienced, you know what it feels like, and you can manage it yourself. We don't need meditation. We don't need rituals. There's no mumbo jumbo, no manifestation stuff. Now, nothing against meditation, nothing against ritual. Those are certainly enhancers, but I wanted to do it without them being required. And that's what we have here. It's a 90-minute conversation condensed into 2 or 3. The first step, we've got pre-stimulus, beliefs, neuroplasticity, priming, mindset, and then physiology. Each one of these could impact the others. Each one could be a weak link. So we have to make sure that this is intact. That's why it's the first step. And while we don't have to be expert at mindset and expert at neuroplasticity, we at least have to be at a base level where it's not hurting us. The second step is our state. So we're always in some kind of a state. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And so we got mental state, physical, spiritual. So there's a state of being for each of those, and a collective, a holistic state of being, and then self-image. And while self-image is not quote unquote state, it is part of what's going to impact us when we get to a stimulus, because if our self-image is compromised and we have a stimulus that's on the edge of our ability, it's probably going to go the wrong way. So then you have the stimulus out of our control, right? So the step 1 and 2 is in our control, 3 to 7 is in our control. Stimulus, they can come from anywhere. The problem is our conditioned reaction, which is what we have. The conditioned reaction tends to treat many stimuli like a Serengeti tiger. And we have this fight or flight level that's way overboard. So, it ruins our day, it keeps you preoccupied, etc. That conditioned reaction is at the subconscious level. Now, I will use the subconscious and the network of neurons interchangeably, because the habits actually reside in the network of neurons. For centuries, it's been thought that the habits live in the subconscious mind, but now we know that the habits live in the network of neurons. It makes it much easier to actually handle it when it comes to making changes or wanting to live the best version of yourself. So we have the conditioned reaction. That happens within a quarter of a second, which is why we have to condition in the change at the conditioning level. We use the reticular activating system to do that, as well as shift into the response. So now you're not just giving a reaction to the conscious mind for a response, you're giving a reaction with an assessment. Again, that can be done in the reticular activating system, just giving it different instructions. So you got a quarter of a second for the conditioned reaction, and you have another quarter of a second for the conscious mind to come online. And so within a half a second, this thing is off and running. Without this intervention, you're going to just repeat the past, because Our conditioned reaction is going to be pretty much the same. Our response, if it matches that, it's going to be the same. I have the next one is E. It's emotional modulation. This is step 5. And you notice I have 90 seconds there. 90 seconds is because if we are going to be emotionally triggered, or if this is challenging emotionally, then we're going to have to do an emotional modulation, and that emotional modulation takes about 90 seconds, and then we're ready to take some action. And then the last one, M, is mindfulness. We want to get back to a mindfulness state. So we're back here to pre-stimulus, ready for that next stimulus to come. And this is how we keep leveling up, because we're constantly improving our state of being, which puts us in a better position to deal with the stimulus that hit us no matter what. So you notice this spells scream, because left to its own, by the time the day is half over, we want to maybe scream thousands of times already. So we're going to shift that by controlling what we can control, so that the stimulus is no longer a stimulus, it's just life. And when life happens, we already know what to do. And that's how it puts our dream within our reach, because that life that we want to design requires us to be in charge of our present moments. And that's what this process does. We want to keep leveling this up. Allostasis is what is going to end up happening, which is the brain is flooding our system with excess neurotransmitters, so we have enough dopamine to amplify the signal in the neural pathways. So again, this is a much longer conversation. I wanted to condense it.